Welcome back to my YouTube channel and podcast, Wonders and Miracles, where we get to celebrate miraculous moments in everyday lives. I'm your host, Liza Lawrence, and I'm so happy to have you join me today as we talk with Whitney from Utah. When Whitney was just 4 years old, she started having seizures. In 12th grade, she got brain surgery and saw miracles occur for her. She will also share the miracles that she has seen with a more sensitive topic, which I'd like to give a trigger warning for when she was sexually assaulted. I'm excited to have her share with us all the details of her stories, but before we jump into this episode, I would like to highlight my favorite gratitude journal, The Blessings I Witnessed Today. I created this journal in hopes that we can capture our daily miracles. Gratitude is a powerful way to notice the miracles that are occurring in your life each day. You can find this journal on Amazon.com or on my website, wondersandmiracles.com. I'll provide the links below. And start recording your blessings and miracles today. So, Whitney, thank you for being here. And I'm so excited to hear your story. Go ahead and share with us all the details.
Okay, thank you so much for having me. So, when I was younger, I got my tonsils taken out, and they gave me a medication that turned out I was allergic to. It was Phenergan. That put me in a coma, and I was in a coma for quite a while. That was a big problem for a lot of people. They were not expecting the reaction, and because back then that was like a big time medication kids could have, but nowadays you have to be about, I believe it's 16 to be or older to have that medication because it has so many side effects. And it was one in like 1,000, I believe, that would have a reaction, and I was that lucky person to have that reaction, or you can say unlucky to have that reaction. So my parents spent a couple of days in the hospital with me when I was in a coma and trying to figure out what to do about me. I was always in the hospital for getting tests done to figure out what they're going to do. And when I was in kindergarten, I started to have seizures. It totally kind of freaked my parents out. It was unexpected and not an easy thing for them to have because I started to turn blue. I was no air whatsoever. So of course they called 911. And once I got about 5, 6, I was still having seizures and always going to the doctors. The doctors became like my best friends. But back then I was actually liked it because every time I went to the doctors, they'd give me a toy. So I was like, oh, if I go to the doctors, I get a toy. So it can't be that bad. That part was fun, getting the toys and stuff. But later on, it was always going to the doctors multiple times a week. And later on, they found that I was having at least 70 seizures a year.
Wow.
And it was constant. And it'd be in the middle of the store, in the middle of the church, or whatever. It could just happen. It got harder later on. Once I hit kindergarten, when I was in kindergarten, I had to repeat kindergarten again because it just happened so much that I missed so much kindergarten. I didn't even know really anything.
And what were your seizures like? Because I know some people have like mini seizures where they just sort of space out, and some have like the typical, what we might think of seizures. What were your seizures like?
They were all sorts. Most of them were grand malls, the giant big ones.
So you'd lay and seize, and
yeah.
Would you lose consciousness?
Yep. And the doctors like laid some rules out, like I couldn't be in the pool. I had to have 2 adults, and I couldn't go biking and all that, all those basic things that every little kid, should be able to do. As a teenager, I still never learned how to bike. It made me really jealous because all my friends were like all biking, and that's what kids do. And I never got to do the monkey bars. And seeing all my friends, I'm like, it's not fair. These kids get to do all these things, but my parents were always like, it's okay, you can still do these things, but you just have to be more careful. They're always just really cautious about it because they just didn't want things to happen. Because we had some people in our church who had seizures too, but they were in the wheelchairs and couldn't even talk and all that, and they didn't want me to have the same kind of problems because they saw how bad things could really get. And I was like, but just, me being a teenager, not understanding the whole picture, I didn't think it was fair.
What was that like, knowing that at any moment you could have a seizure growing up?
It was scary because It was like just being in a public place. Like one time in high school, I had a seizure and I was like on the third floor, and my teacher had to carry me down all the stairs. My teachers always had to be on the lookout for me. As I say, and it's always like embarrassing for me as a student being like going the next day to class and be like, oh, that's the kid who had a seizure in class.
Were there warning signs when you could tell you were going to have a seizure, or they would
No,
just hit?
they would just hit at random times.
Wow. Yeah, that would be scary.
And then because growing up, my parents always like, it's gonna be hard for you to get married because lots of guys would be like, they didn't really want to date me because like, I don't want to be with you if you're gonna have a seizure.
Yeah. Yeah. It would scare people, I'm sure.
That's even something that since I stopped having seizures, that's how I mentioned it to my husband. He's like, yeah, looking back, if you had that, I honestly couldn't have married you. I'm sorry, but it's just,
Interesting.
he's like, it was just been so hard to go through all that,
Yeah.
especially if you're having that many seizures. And he's like, I just emotionally don't think I could have handled that.
Interesting. Yeah.
Later on, when I hit about 15, they were starting to consider doing brain surgery, but they're like, we just don't have a really good system yet. We want to make sure we have a really good system because if we don't, you could possibly die, and we don't want that to happen. As I got in my senior year of high school, they are finally like, we actually have a really good system. We are wanting to run some more tests and we can get this done. So I had some tests done where I would have to stay up for like one night and they take me off my medications and they make me seize. The funny thing is, anytime they'd want me to actually seize, I would never seize. They would do like everything possible and run any kind of like do striking legs and take me off my meds for I would go 5 days and not have a seizure without being on meds. But if other times when I was like not taking my meds on myself, I would just seize all the time. But when the doctors actually wanted me to, I wouldn't do it. So it was always really interesting to have that happen. Because one time I was like in the hospital for like 5 days, and they're like, we have to send you home because we literally can't keep you here anymore. And like the next day I get home and I'd have a seizure. So once I got the test done, they're like, we have the results, so we're ready to actually do the surgery. The doctors actually warned me. They said, so if it doesn't work, you could die, but this also has a 9% chance of making you seizure free.
How much?
A 90%
Oh,
chance.
90%. Okay. So were you hopeful?
I was scared to death. My parents were like, we feel like it's the best thing for you to do. And also it's coming out of my parents' pocket, so they're the ones paying for it. And the thing with that is it was my senior year of high school, and it would mean I would not graduate. And I already had missed so much school, so I was behind in school, so I didn't really know what to do. I was frustrated and I was just like at the point I'm like, I just don't know what to do with my life right now. And I got told and by somebody through my church that if I did this, there would be a remarkable recovery. I thought that was really interesting because I told them at the doctor's, I'm like, because he explained in detail like everything that they do to me, but I'm like, this is how I feel what's going to happen is you're going to literally take my brain and you're going to drop it and then you'll put it in my back of my head. That was my biggest fear. And like, my parents were like, that's so funny. That's literally not what they're going to do. They are trained for 15 plus years. And I'm like, but literally, they're going to just drop my brain and then it won't be clean anymore. So I finally agreed to let them do it. The brain surgery took about 18 hours, and I lost a big chunk of my hair. I was partly bald, and that was the worst thing. You mean, being a girl, you have to have hair. You literally do have to have hair. And that part, I think, was the hardest thing for me because I'm like, I can't go into public without having hair. My friends brought me little hats and stuff, and that helped a lot. But at the same time, I'm like, I still want my hair. I'm like, I used to always hate having curly hair, but for the first time ever, I was like, I miss my curly hair. They told me it was going to be probably a month, 2 months that I'd have to relearn how to walk, how to talk, how to eat again because they took the whole left hippocampus out. They also found 3 tumors on my left side. And so that was a big chunk of like the brain to lose. And it was really frustrating for me because I'm like, I was having relearn how to drink through a straw even. I was trying to drink through it. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. I'm like, I literally can't remember it. And I'm how old and I can't do this? And the doctors are like, yeah, it's going to be about a month till you can get home. And walking and standing up, I couldn't stand up by myself. And just, it was so frustrating and hard to see myself do this. And I'm like, this is supposed to be me when I'm like 90 years old. And so I was like, so like heartbroken that it was like that. I kept telling the doctor, I'm like, I'm going to go home in 2 weeks, guaranteed. And they're like, no, it's not. It's not going to happen. Don't get your hopes up. We don't want you to get your heart crushed. I kept trying putting my heart to it, and in like 5 days, I actually did start to do a couple of steps all by myself. And they're like, wow, that's actually really surprising. And they're like, we don't expect that. We never see that in patients. Then within about 2.5, 3 weeks, I started walking by myself and using the bathroom by myself. And they actually agreed to let me go home. And I was like so relieved and so happy. But like the thing that I couldn't do was I couldn't smile. My smile was crooked. And everyone's like, we want you to smile, smile for the camera. I literally can't smile. But 2 months later, I hadn't had any seizures. And I'm like, wow, I always like had a funny way of talking and stuff. And I had to go like speech therapy. So all the things I had to relearn how to speak and stuff, it was really frustrating for me to go back through like feeling like I'm like a little kid again. And I'm like, I'm this 12th grader who's getting ready to go to college. I need to not feel like I'm this little kid again.
That is challenging, when you feel like, you're older, but you're feeling like a small child learning to these skills that you had once. Could you remember, like, I used to know how to do this?
Yeah.
And so that was what was so frustrating is your body couldn't do it.
And just going to speech therapy and just having to say all those basic words. And they're like, okay, we need to learn how to smile again. I'm like, I should be able to smile. That's what a normal person can do. It was like almost about 5 months just therapy of learning all the talking and stuff. At a time, I was so frustrated, but at the end, I was like, I'm grateful I had this person who was willing to work with me, because at times I would just get really sassy and just frustrated with her. By the end, I was like so sad to leave her because she helped me become more patient with myself and more loving with myself. So it was about 5 months afterwards, and she's like, I think you're actually ready to be done because you're able to talk, you're able to smile. You still have a small little crack on your, and not smiling all the way, but if you keep working on it, you're going to be able to make it. It was 2016 when I got the brain surgery, and then 2 years ago from this day, it was when I was able to get off one of my seizure meds, because I had to continue taking seizure meds. Because when I was on that one of my medications, it would make if I ever want to get pregnant, they told me the baby would be born without the skull, which was really like freaky. I'm like, I cannot imagine having a baby be born without a skull, because they're like, yeah, there's no way the baby would be able to survive. Because I'm like, someday I'm like, I want to have kids, I want to have a family and stuff. I kept meeting with doctors about medication change, and like, we just don't want to take you right off your medications because your body's so used to being on medications. We also don't know if your seizures are going to come back, because we need to wait to see if the surgery actually did anything. So we have to wait for about 1 year to 2 years before we take you off your medication. We can only slowly lower you off. Right after my brain surgery, I'm like, I haven't had any seizures for 3 months, so I'm going to just stop taking my medication. And I did that, and I immediately had a seizure.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Then we had to race me to the hospital, and because the seizure lasted 8 minutes.
Wow.
Then the doctor's like, that's why you need to listen to us. We have the knowledge.
Wow.
You have the knowledge about having seizures, but not the knowledge of all the medication stuff. So I then waited about another year, and they're like, we feel like we can slowly lower you off this one medication. And they took me off it slowly, and I had no seizures. A year later, I'm like, I want to try and get off one more medication. And they lowered me off that slowly, and I had no seizures. So that's been a really big miracle for me, just seeing like how there's been no seizures since then.
That is amazing. Yeah.
And they were like, we're going to keep you on this one medication because this has been the medication you've been on the longest. But in that, whenever you're ready, you can try having kids and stuff because this is the medication that won't affect any kind of thing with the child. And that was the biggest miracle for me to see.
Yeah. I love that. During this whole time, what was your relationship with God like? How did you rely on him?
I felt a lot of time alone and like no one was there for me. But as I was going through, like after having my brain surgery, he slowly like put people in my lives. Shortly after my brain surgery, I got sexually assaulted. It was like the worst, one of the worst things happened to me. No one should ever have to go through that. But going through that helped me find some friends to help me. So my friends went through the exact same thing that I went through. And so we were able to help each other become stronger and more resilient through it. And then later on, I got sexually assaulted again. And I was like, I'm just done with guys. Guys are the worst thing on the planet. So I'm never going to talk to a guy again. And then not even three weeks later, my now husband contacted me and wanted to go on a date. And I turned him down 6 times. And he kept wanting to go out with me. And my mom told me, unless you really feel like you shouldn't, you need to just go out with him and just see what happens. And I'm like, fine, it's gonna be a free soda, and I can get a soda out of this, and I can just say adios to him. I went out and I kind of treated him like a jerk, but we went out for a walk and we connected. He helped me realize that I can be a better person and helped me to trust people again. That was I think the greatest thing that God gave me was finding someone who I could actually trust again and know that not all men are bad and that I can love myself again, because that time period I was going through was where I was blaming myself for everything that happened and not seeing all things that was good about myself. Because I met my husband in April of 2021, and then we started just really connecting, and I just kept reaching out to him when I needed someone to talk to or when I was struggling with my self-image or stuff like that. And then that August, we got married. It was really fast. Welcome to BYU. I do. So it was the right thing. I needed someone to help me realize that I was important and worth something, because after being sexually assaulted, I felt like everything was my fault, and that wasn't the truth. I think lots of people who have that problem and get sexually assaulted, they tend to blame themselves, and it really isn't their fault. It takes time to realize that, but my husband has helped me realize that throughout the time. And I'm eternally grateful for that.
Yeah, I'm so happy for you to have a husband that can see past that and see your value and your worth and help you see that. That is beautiful. That's a miracle right there.
It's nice to be able to see that we can work together as a team, even though sometimes I may have triggers that may set me back. He's still there for me no matter what. And I will never take anything back, even though those sexual assaults, they tear me apart. They may help me become who I am today, and I'm eternally grateful for them. I honestly wouldn't have met my husband if it weren't for all those things that happened to me.
I think it's interesting that we can see God's hand orchestrating things, even if it's a hard experience. I'm glad that you're seeing the good that has come out of it. What other things have you seen that has been good that's come out of the struggle of both the seizures and the sexual assault situations?
Right now, I think the biggest thing is I'm grateful for the seizures, because if I didn't have them, I wouldn't be able to help other people, because there's other people who I've taken care of their kids who have had seizures, or people who've started having them at my age, and I'm like, oh, this is what you can look for, this is what you can do, and I can better help them. And those people who have been sexually assaulted now, I'm like, you should be not blaming yourself. You should be able to reach out. That's why I like being on podcasts and talking about it, because that's the best way to reach to people now. Because podcasts are what people do. I'll listen to in their free time.
I love that. So I love that you're being an advocate for a voice for helping people and giving permission for them to work through the things that they're working through, the struggle. So are you seizure free? Have you had no more seizures since you got off that last medication?
Yep, I've been seizure free for about 6 years now.
Wow.
And now, because of that, me and my husband are expecting a baby coming.
Oh, congratulations. That is so fun. When's the baby due?
It's May 1st.
Okay, that's exciting. How has your pregnancy been? Have they worried about seizures coming back with pregnancy?
It was actually that was another scare that I had, was because of all my health problems and stuff. They were doing like some actual scans. I went in and they were like, "Oh, it looks like it's gonna be a miscarriage." And I was like, "Please don't have that happen. I just can't be like that." The ER was like, "Yeah, it looks like there's nothing there. They don't see anything." So they told me to go check in with my primary care, my other doctor, and I went to see my primary care. He's like, "Yep, there's nothing here. There's no hope." And me and my husband are like, "Is there just a tiniest bit of hope? We just need like a little bit of hope." And they're like, "Nope, don't get your hopes up." We like just fall, of course, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day I made it with my other doctor, and I was like just hoping and praying for a miracle. He did a scan and he's like, "Ashley, we see a baby. We literally see a baby." That was I think my next biggest miracle I just had was just find out the baby's still there. And they're like, "Okay, we want you back in 2 weeks." And I went back 2 weeks ago. They got another picture and the baby's heartbeat going and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, what a relief. That is a beautiful miracle and such a gift. I'm happy for you. That is
Yes.
lovely. You mentioned that a church leader said to you that you'd have a full recovery before your brain surgery. He mentioned that. What did you feel when he said that?
I wondered like what kind of he meant, what would it be? But now as I see me not having seizures, that's a full recovery for me. Because lots of people I've talked to who've had this brain surgery that I went through, they went completely blind. They went completely unable to walk. The only thing that I did lose was I lost part of my vision. So I'm unable to drive. So that's the only downside of this whole thing, was losing part of my vision.
But were you unable to drive before because of the seizures?
I got close to it because I had to make I had to make like 9 months, but I almost made 9 months. So I started learning and then I had a seizure. So,
Okay.
but now it's permanently, but I'll never be able to drive. So luckily my husband drives, so he drives me everywhere.
And you just need to keep close with people around you that could drive you if he's not around, if he's not home.
Yes.
Well, what else have you learned from these experiences?
I think that there's always a miracle somewhere, even though in the darkest times there's going to be miracles for you if you look hard.
I love that. I love that. Amen. And I agree with you. So thank you very much for sharing your story.
Yep, no problem.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Wonders and Miracles podcast. I hope you enjoyed this episode with Whitney. I'm so grateful that she was willing to share her miracle stories of overcoming her seizures, the experiences that she had with the seizures, and how she was able to make a remarkable recovery as promised to her from a church leader, and that she's got beautiful things happening in her life right now as a married wife with a baby on the way. I'm so happy for her and the miracles that she has seen in her journey through life. I hope that we can also notice the miracles that have come about in our lives from the difficult things that have happened to us. You know, that was one of her messages, is there's good things that have come from the difficult, from the hard, including the seizures and the sexual assault. She was able to make supportive friends and meet her husband and move forward in beautiful ways. So I would just like to invite us again to record those blessings, those miracles that we see in our lives. And I'd invite you to get my journal, The Blessings I Witnessed Today, to keep record of the blessings, the miracles that are taking place in our lives. You can find that on my website at wondersandmiracles.com or on amazon.com, and start recording the miracles and blessings that you see in your life every day. Because the more miracles we notice, the more miracles happen. Have a great day.